Hi, we're here with former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, and I'm so excited. Thank you so much. Terry Morrone is the producer, public access producer. Welcome, and thank you so much. Maybe you would want to talk a little bit about why you were here today.
This was a wonderful event in the heart of New York City. Sadly, at the Audubon Ballroom, the place where Malcolm X was murdered. And we had a bit of frank discussion about the life and times of Malcolm, the people around him, the family that paid the ultimate price for the convictions that he held, and the government that did everything within its power to destroy him and the movement that he was trying to build.
And I think you're in such a unique position because you won and you energized your base. You were actually a part of the government, and when you were there, you did powerful, wonderful things. And now that you were part of actually also the Democratic Party, and then you left it, or you got unelected, and now you're in a very interesting position to be critiquing the government and in the government. And I thought maybe you could speak about that transition or what you learned from being in and out.
Well, what I've learned being in and out, as you correctly point out, is that there are a lot of people who have a lot of questions about the government. And they don't exactly know where to turn to for answers because the corporate media don't tell the people the truth. And one of the things that we talked about today was the counterintelligence program and how strong the counterintelligence program was. One of its aims was to destroy, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize, in the particular case that we were looking at, black leadership, but dissent. And so then when we look at what they did to Malcolm X, when we look at what they did to Martin Luther King Jr., Martin Luther King Jr. was hounded for the last 5 years of his life, and then after he was murdered, the corporate media continued to try and change the very meaning and the significance of the movement that he was building as well. So we shouldn't be surprised when we read in the newspaper that we have CIA psychological operations agents stationed at the CNN newsroom. We shouldn't be surprised that the Bush administration would lie to the American people through the corporate media 935 times. And the corporate media would just repeat what the government said. They did it during the COINTELPRO era. They did it against Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And we're talking about the New York Times, the Christian Science Monitor, the St. Louis Times-Dispatch, the New Orleans Times-Picayune, the Atlanta Constitution. These are newspapers that have a reputation or have tried to acquire this reputation of telling the truth. And people think that when they read them, they are reading a version of the truth, but in some cases, it's a far cry from the truth, and it's coming from the most established media outlets in our country.
Well, you were discussing the corporate media, and we're very proud to not be the corporate media. And actually,
congratulations.
At the last interview, when I was apologizing for the mud on my pants, I said, "I'm so sorry, but we're the radicals. We were across the street demonstrating," and you said, "That's why I invited you in here, because you were the radicals." So I thank you for never being very corporate. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on the Democratic Party being a part of the corporate parties and the corporate media and the change that you made. For a long time, we were just waiting for you to say that you would be green, and I can't tell you how honored the Greens are that you switched. But do you have any thoughts about going from the Democratic to the Green Party?
One of the things that I have to say is that there are a whole lot of people in this country who think green, believe green, live green, but they just haven't made the switch to becoming members of the Green Party. And you could say that we have a system of control, of political control in this country that funnels people into the two-party paradigm. Thank goodness there's a healthy group of people out there who reject that kind of control and manipulation. I would also have to say thank you to the people who have labored for the last two decades to build the Green Party in this country so that people like me can have a place to call home when we finally wake up and understand that the Democratic Party, notwithstanding the wonderful candidates who might choose to run under the Democratic Party's banner, the Democratic Party itself is a mechanism of control that does not permit a certain kind of political thought or political behavior. There's no room for the Mike Gravells. There's no room for the Dennis Kuciniches. So there was no room for me as I tried to talk about accountability of our resources. How can the Pentagon just say we've lost $2.3 trillion, but it's okay because the United States people can afford it? What about truth about what happened on September 11th? 3,000 people were murdered. And how come we can't expect the government to tell us the truth about what happened on that day? Why didn't the government protect us? Why didn't the Bush administration protect us? It's charged with protecting the American people. It didn't do that on 9/11, and it didn't do that with Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. And so when we try to hold our elected officials accountable through the constitutional means provided to us by way of impeachment, then the Democrats are the ones who say impeachment's off the table. The Democrats are the one who failed to repeal the Patriot Act. The Democrats are the one who continue to fund the war. The Democrats are the ones who say that the Bush tax cuts are all right. And even though they railed against them when they were in the minority, now that they're in the majority and they could do something about it, they failed to do it. So I decided on my birthday that I would declare my independence from the Democratic Party, and I would declare my independence from any national leadership that was complicit in war crimes, crimes against humanity, torture, and all of the rest of it. I reject it, and I'm happy to have joined with other people in the Green Party who reject that as well.
You're so profound and always thinking the right way, and you fed into a question that Terry Morrone, our producer, actually had. So he wants to hear you say more and more about that missing money because you seem to really be onto things.
Basically, your producer is absolutely right. The $2.3 trillion that's, quote, missing isn't really missing at all. Somebody got the money. Just like every day, according to American Friends Service Committee, we now know that we spend $720 million every day on war. And it's not just that the American people are spending that money. Somebody's getting that money. That's the other side of the equation. And so I did ask the question about the $2.3 trillion. Well, now you can't get an answer on that. However, about the $20 billion that they've already spent to make the computers talk to each other, we did get reams and reams and reams and reams of paper. But, you know, the bottom line is that the contracts go to the same companies because they are the ones who can pull the insider deals.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
American history. In fact, this is the day where on 43 years ago today, Malcolm X, Omawali, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz was cut down in New York City. In fact, in the very space we are in right now. We're broadcasting live from the Audubon Ballroom in New York City on Broadway. And we are here under the auspices of a great institution that we will acknowledge first and foremost, an institution carrying on the vision of Brother Minister Malcolm and Dr. Betty Shabazz, the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Education Center. Let's give them a round of applause. I will say at the outset that if you have not had the opportunity to walk through this building and to see the very moving photographs and images of Malcolm and his family. Of course, we sit just to the left of those who are listening on the radio, on Sirius Satellite Radio. We sit just to the left, appropriately, we're on the Sirius Left channel. We sit just to the left of Malcolm and his statue right here, and it is a very moving experience, so much so that I personally really wanted to be here, and I'm thankful to both the Center and the Sirius Satellite Radio and all the staff here in New York. It is critical that we don't look at any of this in a vacuum, of course, because we know that between 1963 and 1968, there were a number of political assassinations, some well-known individuals, some not so well-known. And only a fool would think that all of these things were just happenstance or coincidental.
Amen.
We're coming up on the 40th anniversary of Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy, the 45th anniversary of JFK, and of course Malcolm in between, Medgar Evers and others. And so all of this must be put in the proper context. The first thing I'm going to do now is introduce our panel. First of all, in case you missed it, my name is, well, I have two names. My traditional name is Matsimla Mafumo. My Christian name is Mark Thompson. You all know we do that in our experience here in America. But I'm the host of Make It Plain. I want to introduce the very distinguished panel that we have here. And one of the panelists is joining us. We want to try to get him a chair. But first of all, I'm going to start to my left and come across Dr. Jared Ball of Morgan State University. Is he a professor, lecturer, and talk show host on Pacifica himself? Please welcome Dr. Jared Ball. Give him a round of applause. Perhaps one of the first individuals to author a definitive narrative on the fateful events that occurred here 43 years ago. He now teaches at Baltimore City Community College. He is the author of Conspiracies, Unraveling the Assassination of Malcolm X, Baba Zach Kondo. Please give him a round of applause. A dear friend, and he and I, bump into one another on the front lines many times. It's something, sometimes we don't even get to talk to one another. When you bump into each other on the front lines, you know that you're in the right place and in good company. I mentioned the Coalition on Political Assassinations. He heads that organization, and I'm thankful there is an organization of that type to continue to give us context and to prevent us from forgetting history. Please welcome John Judge. Give him a round of applause. Another dear friend and elder and mentor who I miss seeing regularly in Washington, D.C. He was a part of the original founding of the old AAU. And you know what that is, correct? For those who don't, the Organization of African American Unity, one of the organizations that Minister Malcolm founded just before his death. This individual was a significant part of that, and we do well to hear from him. A. Peter Bailey is here with us. Give him a round of applause. Our next guest is, we all know and love. Now, I was saying to my producer earlier, Ms. Rogers, we call Muhammad Ali the greatest because he won 3 heavyweight titles, correct? Now, if she, she ran for office one time, lost, got elected again, had the heavyweight title, so to speak, she'll have the distinction of being the greatest. And in the company of Muhammad Ali, we all want to respect her for her work. One of the most, when she was in Congress, one of the most outspoken and fearless members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and there is no coincidence there either in terms of the sacrifices she's made and some of the repercussions that she's had to endure. But we're happy to have her, and we do acknowledge that she is a candidate with the Green Party for the presidency of the United States. There aren't just 2 presidents, or 3. I don't know how many left after today. It changes so much. But Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, give her. Another very dear friend who particularly what it means for them to be here. I don't know about you, but this to me is a very spiritual moment.
Yes, it is.
To be here and to be where this brother was. We can only imagine what this country would have been had he lived, had JFK lived, or RFK, or MLK, if all of these individuals had lived, and the tension that existed between all of them been allowed to come to full fruition to make not only this nation a better place, but the world. Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, the meaning for you being here today, and I understand that you have been doing research on COINTELPRO itself. Tell us all about that, if you will.
Thank you very much for holding this. I would like to also add my word of thanks to those who make this event possible in this very special place. For me, this is sacred ground for those of us who struggle. And as I look out into the audience and I see every chair filled, it is clear that there are a lot of us who struggle, and we want very much to follow in the footsteps of Malcolm X. In our trip over here to this venue, we were listening to Malcolm's speeches that were being played on the radio. And it was clear that he believed in political action for justice. But that political action also had to have an agenda. And so I would like to, at least for half a minute, just say agenda. But in addition, because of the work that I've done on the counterintelligence program and the information, quite frankly, that has been made available to me because of my relationship with John Judge, we know that there was intense media distortion about him. We know that the government also fed stories to the media, and the media were willingly compliant in printing stories that were outright lies. We know that.
Amen.
So we have to not be, we can't be surprised if the government representatives told us 935 lies that ended up getting us into war in Iraq, and the government and the media repeated those lies without question, we shouldn't be surprised, because this is nothing new. This isn't the first time it's happened. I would also like to say a few words about my relationship with John Judge and COPA, and the fact that we do have research that John and COPA have done with respect to JFK, RFK. But then when I went into Congress from Georgia with a special relationship with the King family, being supported by the King family, and I also have to say that my political campaigns were also supported by Dr. Betty Shabazz as well. But we learned that from the work that COPA had done on JFK, that there were direct tie-ins with the murder of MLK. And so we have to have the truth. We must search for the truth. And so then right here in New York City, where 3,000 people were murdered on September 11th, we also have to have 911 truth. It is because of our pursuit of the truth that we introduced legislation while I was in Congress to open up the government's archives and records and documents, not only with respect to the murder of MLK, but also with respect to the murder of Tupac. Then I would like to say, finally, that because of the work that John had done and COPA had done historically on all of the political assassinations, they've inspired me to change my dissertation topic from something that was very esoteric in dealing with international affairs. But I've been accepted into the University of California at Berkeley's PhD program, where I'm going to write about political assassinations. Assassinated. This document points to regime change on Black America. So what happened with Malcolm, what happened with Martin, what happened with Fred Hampton, what happened with the Black Panthers, what happened with all of our political prisoners, we must understand was a pattern that was a part of regime change, which is responsible to this day for the statistics of racial disparities that continue to plague us in the political arena, which means then that we cannot afford to participate without an agenda. Amen. I will conclude at this point.
What has Congress not done? What can Congress or elected officials in general do to get more information released about the facts of of Malcolm X and others?
You can propose legislation, and then you get 218 votes in the House and 51 votes in the Senate, and then it becomes law, and the documents are made available to the public. I would just like to say that in the book, the COINTELPRO Papers, the Marcus Garvey document is dated October 1919, where J. Edgar Hoover remarks that Marcus Garvey excites the Negroes. That's the quote. And it's too bad that nothing has, he's not committed any crime that could allow us to deport him. And so this idea of exciting the Negroes is something that I think we need to explore a little bit more, because it shows, as you correctly point out, the power of excited Negroes. And so then that's why they had to make sure that there was no Messiah that rose. That was the language in the COINTELPRO papers. But also, that's why they had to create excitement for Negroes so they could control the excitement. And that's where that October 11th, 1965 document comes into play, stamped by the CIA, where they talk about clean Negroes. And remember when Joe Biden called a clean Negro? Now that had special significance for me because I was aware of that document.
Wow.
Let us also remember that the language in the founding document of COINTELPRO was to misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize. And so now we have to understand that people have paid a personal price because the government did things that at least one senator characterized as illegal and un-American. Now, the question then that I would like to ask is, in recognition of the fact that the very law enforcement officers who tortured the members of the San Francisco 8 came back 30 years later to arrest them at their homes, have any of the families that have been victimized by the counterintelligence program been made whole?
No. No.
What about the law enforcement agents who were complicit in the torture or this misdirection, this discrediting, this otherwise neutralizing, which meant up to and including murder? Have they been held accountable for their actions?
No.
What about the paid informants who collected silver coins from the United States government to turn their brothers in? Are they dying? Did they die natural deaths as opposed to our brother who didn't die a natural death and many others? So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I know that our community has so much work. The truth community in this country has so much work that it hasn't even begun to scratch the surface if we're talking about holding people accountable, holding the system accountable for what it does. The system is people.
Yeah.
And these are individuals who have names, and we ought to be holding these individuals accountable. Be at runcynthiarun.org or www.allthingscynthiamckinney.com, and I would encourage people to go there to read the Reconstruction platform when we talk about having an agenda,
okay,
and view the film American Blackout.